Can you be good without God? Let's find out. Absolutely astounding. There you have it. Undeniable proof that you can be good without believing in God. But wait, the question isn't, can you be good without believing in God? The question is, can you be good without God? See, here's the problem. If there is no God, what basis remains for objective good or bad, right or wrong? If God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. And here's why. Without some objective reference point, we have no way of saying that something is really up or down. God's nature provides an objective reference point for moral values. It's the standard against which all actions and decisions are measured. But if there's no God, there's no objective reference point. All we're left with is one person's viewpoint, which is no more valid than anyone else's viewpoint. This kind of morality is subjective, not objective. It's like a preference for strawberry ice cream. The preference is in the subject, not the object. So it doesn't apply to other people. In the same way, subjective morality applies only to the subject. It's not valid or binding for anyone else. So, in a world without God, there can be no evil and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. God has expressed his moral nature to us as commands. These provide the basis for moral duties. For example, God's essential attribute of love is expressed in his command to love your neighbor as yourself. This command provides a foundation upon which we can affirm the objective goodness of generosity, self-sacrifice, and equality. And we can condemn as objectively evil greed, abuse, and discrimination. This raises a problem. Is something good just because God wills it, or does God will something because it is good? The answer is neither one. Rather, God wills something because he is good. God is the standard of moral values, just as a live musical performance is the standard for a high-fidelity recording.
Without your love.
The more a recording sounds like the original, the better it is. Likewise, the more closely a moral action conforms to God's nature, the better it is. But if atheism is true, there is no ultimate standard. So there can be no moral obligations or duties. Who or what lays such duties upon us? No one. Remember, for the atheist, humans are just accidents of nature, highly evolved animals. But animals have no moral obligations to one another. When a cat kills a mouse, it hasn't done anything morally wrong. The cat's just being a cat. If God doesn't exist, we should view human behavior in the same way. No action should be considered morally right or wrong. But the problem is, good and bad, right and wrong, do exist. Just as our sense experience convinces us that the physical world is objectively real, our moral experience convinces us that moral values are objectively real. Every time you say, "Hey, that's not fair, that's wrong, that's an injustice," you affirm your belief in the existence of objective morals. We're well aware that child abuse, racial discrimination, and terrorism are wrong for everybody, always. Is this just a personal preference or opinion? No. The man who says that it is morally acceptable to rape little children is just as mistaken as the man who says 2 + 2 = 5. What all this amounts to, then, is a moral argument for the existence of God. If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. But objective moral values and duties do exist. Therefore, God exists. Atheism fails to provide a foundation for the moral reality every one of us experiences every day. In fact, the existence of objective morality points us directly to the existence of God.
Then I went to the end of it, and then the old man would be ready to die, and he'd say, well, son, sincerity is the best gimmick, remember that. And I'd say, all right, be sincere, that'll win it. He said, that's it. Sincerity and honesty, he said, it'll do it. It'll trick them every time. I said, well, sincere and honesty, I never tried that. I tried everything else, but maybe I'll try sincere and honesty. So then I looked in the book, and it says, the wages of sin is death. Now I figured, well, I don't want to die, so maybe I have been sinful here. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe I'll take a look at my life and say, well, I'm going to change it and start all over. You know, and I know I go to God and I say, hey, man, you're going to forgive me? And he's going to say, what do? You forgive you? I mean, what did you come to me for? Forgive yourself, man. Don't be bothering me. You know, and I think, well, he must be a big, mighty God, man. He just, you know, he ain't got time. You got to make an appointment or something, you know. So I see the whole aspect of the whole trip for children to play, you know. And then I get stuck in the game of playing the goat here, or the lamb, or some other trip. I was a teddy bear, and then I was a goofball, and whatever. And what is the real one? Where's the real one? I don't know where the real one is. It's in a nut word somewhere.
The real Charles Manson.
Used to be a satanic high priest, and now he's a preacher. Listen to some of his stories when he used to be a warlock.
Trump and people get cancer. I mean, I did witchcraft to people. I gave people miscarriages. I gave people abortions. I put people in hospital for surgeries that didn't even have to go surgeries. I did witchcraft so people could lose their minds. I put spirits of bipolar, schizophrenia. I put spirits of disease on people. I put suicide spirits on people. I'd be up all night long praying and talking to the devil. When Christians can't even go to church for 1 hour.
He says he was up all night long praying to the devil, and Christians can't even go to church for 1 hour. I'm telling you guys, we need to step it up. They're not playing games. The satanic realm's real, and Jesus has called us to cast demons out of people. Let's go do the work.
You scared to die?
Sometimes I feel I'm scared to live. Living is what scares me. Dying is easy. Getting up every day and going through this again and again is hard. See, I'm carrying a heavy thought. See, the thought I'm carrying is very heavy. Like I'm on a football team and everybody's. I'm a little guy. I don't have no home team. You got all the home. I got one cheerleader or one coach. See, you got me at a disadvantage because I'm on your ground, see? So, and this is your street, I reckon. You got the cameras and the money and the things. But you can believe me that Bully Osie's had you all on a rib. And all them guys that sold you most of that stuff sold you a bunch of things that weren't real. Not to me. We used to have games we would play. On the movie set, we would take on different people. I'd be Riff Raff Rackus. And Steve would be John Jones, just come in from Minneapolis and driving the truck. And we'd just take other people and play act other people. And then we lost track of who we were. And it went off and do other dimensions and levels of thought and understanding and comprehension that were beyond most people's minds, functions, computers, data. So, all I did was watch and learn everything I could from everybody I ever met. And then when I got out of prison, I just walked around. I didn't tell nobody to do nothing. I said, do what you want to do. Don't tell me what to do. I don't like people telling me what to do. They just come from a place where they told me what to do all my life. You know, I want to find out what to do for myself, you know. I never did. Not yet. But I was going to take a trade one of these days, maybe learn to be a welder or something. Until I can get to the front gate anyway.
Harder and harder to be a Christian as we get closer and closer to the Lord's return. Why? Because things are going to get dark spiritually in our world. Today in America, we live in what I would describe as an ABC culture. ABC. Anything but Christ. Whatever you want to believe, people are cool with that unless it's the Bible and unless it's Jesus Christ. And suddenly you're in trouble. Suddenly you're the bigoted one. You're the narrow-minded one. You're the intolerant one. You're the hateful one. Just because you believe that the Bible is true and you want to live for Jesus Christ. So just know that. But God's going to give you the strength to live this life, but you will be opposed. It's teaching your child how to have a relationship with God. Listen, your children cannot go any further than you yourself have gone. There's a point for teaching, but there's another place for modeling and showing them what it is to walk with and know Jesus Christ. Let's train our children up in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. So if you're in your 20s, it's time to take off the floaties and learn how to swim.
Background. Tell me, if you could describe your childhood in a couple of sentences, how would you describe it?
I didn't have a childhood.
Tell me a little bit more. Tell me more.
I went to reform school in '43, and I've been fighting ever since.
Was it as bad as you describe in the book that was co-authored by Newell Emmons?
That wasn't my book.
That wasn't your
No,
book.
no.
But what about the parts describing your childhood and your experiences in reform school?
That was him writing the book.
So
That had anything to do
the
with
part
it.
about that school in Indiana, that's not true, how you were treated?
Bits and parts of it are true, and bits and parts of it aren't.
Tell me how you would describe how bad it was for you in these reform schools.
A child don't know what bad is.
Well, he says in the book that you were raped, that you were beaten constantly.
Come on, man.
That's not true.
That's what he would like to believe. But
So-
there ain't nobody can do that.
So you're saying that that didn't happen?
No.
So you didn't have a lousy childhood then?
Yeah, I had a terrible childhood. But I'm from here.
In other words, it didn't get to you?
No, I've never sold out. They've never beat me. I haven't been beaten.
Tell me about your terrible childhood.
The child doesn't know what terrible is.
You don't want to talk about it, I think.
I'm telling you, a child doesn't know what terrible is.
Give me
What
a little
is terrible,
bit. Give me
man?
a little description of it.
What is terrible? You know, terrible. What does that mean, terrible?
I don't know. You used the word, so I'm trying to get you to
No, I
describe
didn't.
it to
He
me.
used the word in his book. I didn't. I'm not a sniveler. I don't cry. I don't snivel. I don't look for excuses to get off on other things.
People live their whole life and wonder why things don't go too well. They trusted Jesus Christ as their personal Savior, and yet they suffer one defeat after the other. Can't quite figure out why. Do not realize they have an enemy that's very real, an enemy that's laughed at, criticized, disbelieved, but very, very real, whose goal is threefold: to draw us away from God, thwart God's purpose in our life, and divide us. Satan is a very real person.
Charlie, do you feel you have any scores to settle with anybody on the outside?
Let me think. Do I have any scores out there? And we're making believe, right? Well, I'll tell you, buddy. Well, I don't rightly know. I'm stupid to the point where I'm not really sure. And if you ask the question again, maybe the answer will come to you. What was it again?
If you got out tomorrow, do you have any scores to settle on the outside?
Scores. You mean people that have done me wrong?
Or you feel you've done you wrong?
Oh, that feel that I've done them wrong?
No, feel that they've done you wrong.
Oh.
That you feel have done you wrong.
Oh, well, most people do themselves wrong.
But would you want to go? Would you want to go get anybody?
No.
If you got out, no.
No, they push. See what they do. See, they take all that bad and they push it off on each other. I told the dude, you're doing this to yourself, man. You know, I've been sitting in there. In other words, I'm in the cell, right? And he let me out, and I walk around. The guy says, if you don't do this, we're going to lock you back up. I said, okay, I don't care anyway. I done gave up that thought. Prison's in your mind, man. Like, you know.
Okay.
You can sit in the cell, and the guy said, you're in prison? I said, no, I'm just here. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just sitting here waiting for these people to get done doing what they're doing so I can get out.
Do you have a television set? Do you watch television?
Yeah, I used to watch it a little bit, but it kind of looks, I don't really like it that much.
Okay. Well, what about newspapers? Do you get newspapers?
No, I don't bother with those. I know that they're jiving there.
All right. What radio? Listen to radio?
I listen to a Hearts and Space program. I like that. And the rest of it just like a bunch of... There's no...
What about your music?
I get some classical music on the 98 station that's saying something.
Okay. Well, what about your own music? I remember reading that you at one time had a recording stint at a studio in Hollywood, and that you liked guitar and you wrote music or sang music. Do you still do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that. But the way I do it ain't the same way you guys do it. And the way I do it scares you guys. So I didn't want to scare you guys out of the neighborhood right away. So I just took a can and started banging on it, you know. But we used to have some cosmic gatherings back in the mountains that would probably shake a Mormon Tabernacle choir's eardrums.
You said the kind of music you play scares people. Why shouldn't people be scared by you?
There's only one person you can be scared of, and that's yourself. Afraid of what? Losing your bank account? Afraid of your wife going away? You have all those things. I'm not afraid of losing my watch or someone taking my money or robbing me. I went down to Mexico in the 50s and go down where the Yankees was, and they said, man, you don't go down where the Yankees are. He said, they're terrible. I said, why? He said, well, they don't like people like you. I said, well, they didn't say anything.
Yeah, but I asked the question in the context that, will you believe it or not, there are a lot of people on the outside that think about the possibility of you coming out of here, and they're genuinely scared of you.
Oh, boy, I might just make dust. Everything. Terrible. One little guy. Terrible. Ooh. Boy, how insecure are we as human beings? Put all our fear on one little guy. You're afraid to let him out. He might break all the toys.
Why do you say little guy?
Because I'm not the guy you're trying to make out of me. That's not me. That's some guy in somebody's imagination that wanted to make a couple $100 million for himself. He got rich. He had a good game going. He had a better game going than I did, but he had a good mother to help him. She helped him in a nice game. I was kind of over on the sideline. See, I had to get around that game and look over the tracks.
And so there was a belief in God, and it was defined primarily by the Bible, so there was a kind of cultural morality that survived a long time in America, and it was showing up in elections 20 years ago, 15 years ago. There was still a consensus. We remember the moral majority, the religious right. They were still able to get people elected, still able to have some clout and some power. Let me tell you something. Gone. Gone. No more. There is no more cultural Christianity. There is no collective Christian consensus that is going to have any power in this country whatsoever. In fact, the more distinctly Christian we are, the more we will be labeled as extremists, bizarre, alien, homophobic, intolerant, guilty of hate crimes. Cultural Christianity is, as we know it, that kind of consensus coming from a biblical understanding is gone.
Mine is endless. You put me in a dark, solitary cell. And to you, that's the end. To me, it's the beginning. There's a universe in there. There's a world in there. I'm free.